All right. We are here. We are linked up and locked in for this month's pre-market rundown for March 31st, 2023. Welcome to our daily session, right? What do we go over? We go over the news, notes, and most importantly, the mindset necessary to break all that down in order to remain consistently profitable here across these crazy markets in these crazy times. I'm your host, Adam Holland, stock options expert market strategist. We're here to dive into another day of news, the last day of this week. It's been a very great week in terms of lessons learned, right? We've got some, great examples of different, strategies in price action, that we got to experience live and in person. And of course, made some great money too, which is always very nice. But let's dive into the news. We have plenty of it. I'm sure you guys, have seen it up and down your feeds regarding what we're going to talk about here this morning. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. As always, we're looking to get 1% better by the end of the session. That's why we're here. That's why we gather daily to make daily deposits into ourselves in order to close the gap between where we are and where we are destined to be, right? Where we imagine ourselves to be, where we envision ourselves to be. So make sure you throw that one in the chat, signifying your intention, right? You're stating to everyone, right? To everyone here, to the universe, to yourself, I'm looking to close the gap today. I'm looking to get 1% better. You're speaking that, manifesting that, and it'll come to pass. So our top headline here, storms a brewing. So a Manhattan grand jury voted to indict former President Donald Trump on felony charges, launching the first criminal case against a former president. We are literally living through history. Like, I do not want to minimize that to anyone. We are having headlines that we have never seen before in American history, which is just absolutely crazy. Like, at some point, my kids will learn about this in a history book. And it's just wild, right? What a time to be alive. So let's see here. The precise charges are unknown, and the felony indictment has been filed under seal, but Trump will now face surrender and arrest in the upcoming days. Trump's lawyers have confirmed he's been indicted, according to the Associated Press, referring to payments made during his 2016 campaign to silence claims of an extramarital sexual encounter. Quote, "This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history," Trump said in response to the indictment. "The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we will defeat Joe Biden, and we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again." Sounds about right. That sounds, very Trumpian. Digital World Acquisition Corp, DWAC, which is the blank check company taking Trump's social media company public, rose 11% after hours on Thursday following the news. Of course, right? Because it's like, what they say, the old adage, like all coverage, all press is good press, right? All news related to you is good news. So, DWAC rising 11% after hours following that news, and conservative video network Rumble, ticker RUM, is also up in pre-market trade. The case will likely provide a boost for Trump's media coverage, but it's unlikely to have any legal bearing on his candidacy, even if he is convicted. That is important, right? It's like unlikely to have any type of legal bearing on his candidacy, even if he is convicted. So he could still be a candidate to run, apparently, even if he's convicted. I thought that if you were a convicted felon, you could not run for president. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys thought the same thing. I thought that was the case, but I don't know. Maybe that doesn't apply to him. I'm also not a lawyer, so don't come to me for that. Like, Adam, you said he couldn't get elected. I have no idea, right? This is just in the back of my head. I thought that was the case. The developments will also impact the messaging around the 2024 election season, which could cut different ways politically and ultimately determine what administration will head to the White House and govern the U.S. economy. Now, in terms of outlook, it appears that the case is being built on the falsification of business records, which has been made into a felony due to an intersection with campaign finance law, like the payoff of porn star Stormy Daniels to protect the 2016 election campaign. It would be a novel approach to combine state charges with federal crimes, though a tax angle could change the legal theory behind the case, or possibly another hush money payment made to Playboy model Karen McDougal. So the Manhattan case is just one that Trump is facing. There's a federal probe of his actions around his 2020 presidential loss and a Georgia investigation into his attempts to reverse the election results there. So who knows what this actually ends up manifesting into, right? This could just be kind of like chit chat that doesn't turn into anything, or, even if he's convicted, apparently he can still run. So we don't know, right? We'll have to see kind of what form this takes. But if he's convicted on multiple counts of multiple different crimes, maybe he's not allowed to run. I'm not sure. But overall, he said that he was likely to get indicted. That ended up happening. That ended up being the case. This is the first time that that has happened for a former U.S. president. So like I said, we are literally living through history here. Crazy, crazy time. So we'll see what goes on with that in terms of, tickers that it affects. If he was in the White House, yeah, that this would probably affect broader markets. But for right now, it's only really affecting Trump-specific tickers. So we're talking about Rumble, the conservative news network, whose ticker is RUM, and then DWAC, whose ticker is DWAC. But at the end of the day, that's much more kind of speculative trading, speculative opportunity. There's way too much very easily accessible concrete opportunity in stock markets right now, which we've, been able to demonstrate through our trades the last few days, where it really is just not worth it to be out here YOLOing on DWAC. Let's see here what we got going on for our next headline. So, chip war. Economic fallout is being seen across many industries as China seeks to promote a new world order. Japan is now restricting exports of 23 types of equipment used to make semiconductors in a move that will likely impact companies like Nikon and Tokyo Electron. The battle over silicon has erupted, and as the U.S. looks to isolate China from one of the most important technologies of the future, lobbying its allies abroad to take measures, as well as passing the CHIPS Act on the domestic front and implementing serious export controls of its own. The Netherlands also previously agreed to an American request to impose export restrictions on China, limiting powerful chips and deep lithography tools of Dutch company ASML, while Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen this week is visiting the U.S., where she'll surely talk about TSMC, which is TSM, right, Taiwan Semiconductors, and other local fabs that account for 92% of the world's advanced chip making capacity. So the chip war is on and popping. We are already at war economically with China, right? Right now, we are already at war economically. We're going out. We're trying to hinder their ability to construct their future by hindering their ability to get access to the tools and the building blocks of the future. So again, when we talk about that idea of war with China popping up, it's not far off, right? We're already actively campaigning against them on the global stage. We have been, but it has been ratcheted up, right? It has been ratcheted up. And right now, we're seeing the U.S. and its allies actively take stances to restrict and hinder China. Xi Jinping is a lot like Putin in that he's not a person that likes to get cornered, right? What happens when you corner a rabid animal? They lash out. So just another escalation in the tensions right now going on between the U.S. and China. And the chip sector is a huge sector, right? Very important sector. We heard that NVIDIA is up like 80%, maybe 90% from the lows. So, chips are the building blocks of the future, right? They are quite literally what the future will be built upon. So, any news that is impacting them is important. It looks like NVIDIA overall is moving lower pre-market. That might be because of this news, because of this chip news that's happening. Same thing with AMD. So we'll have to see. Overall, though, SPY higher, right? Disney higher, right? So we've got a number of stocks that are higher with chips moving lower. That's likely because of this news here that we got. So let's see what else we have going on. NATO expansion. So NATO expansion is actually what, it's partially responsible for, and I'm not going to say that because, again, Putin is crazy and Putin's going to do what Putin does. But NATO expansion is partially responsible for, the tensions that boiled over and resulted in the invasion of Ukraine, right? Again, the Cold War ends, the USSR dissolves, right? Their defensive alliance is forced to disband. Russia's defensive alliance was forced to disband, but the U.S. kept their defensive alliance, right? It's like if we're two gangs and we're at war and then the war ends and one gang disbands, but the other gang continues to grow, that is somewhat aggressive, right? Somewhat provoking. And that's kind of the situation that we were in with NATO and Russia, where Russia disbands their defensive alliance and the U.S. keeps theirs and continue to grow it, right? So essentially what we're saying is if you ever do decide to come back, we're going to have the whole world prepared against you. And Russia did not like that, right? Because all NATO members also house U.S. defensive capabilities. So in all NATO countries, we've got our weapons, right? So we've got weapons all around the world that could easily fire all at once on Russia, if we needed to. And Russia does not like that, right? So they ended up invading Ukraine because we were in talks to have Ukraine join NATO. And unfortunately for Russia, as a result of their actions, they have a lot of other countries joining NATO that are afraid of Russia. So these are historically neutral, countries that just stay out of the way that are breaking hundreds of years, right? Not like, oh, these are a few years, hundreds of years of neutrality. Some of these countries have been neutral for as long as the U.S. has been in existence, right? And they're breaking that neutrality now and joining NATO. So that's just set the backdrop for anyone who isn't aware. But Finland is one step closer to becoming a NATO member after Turkey's parliament approved a bill to expand the military alliance. It was the last vote the country needed to join the 30-nation group after Hungary's legislature gave its approval earlier this week. Soon, both Finland and Sweden will be members, meaning that President Putin is getting the exact opposite of what he wanted, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg declared. He wanted less NATO. He's getting more NATO. Stocks like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman have risen about 20% since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, but many other defense players haven't held onto their gains. Now, our last headline here, the Final Four. The bracket-busting nature of the NCAA college basketball tournament this year may be helping the house with its edge. Macquarie analyst Chad Beynon and team calculated an above-average hold rate of 8% after a rash of upsets during the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games. That includes mid-major Florida Atlantic beating the Big 12's Kansas State, a team that was heavy betting favorite of the public and had created some risk for sportsbooks that do not always have perfectly balanced betting action. The push for profitability is the biggest theme in the sports betting sector for 2023, with investors focused on bottom lines and valuations. Check out related stocks and iGaming plays with sports betting revenue in the U.S. forecast to top $10 billion this year. I don't doubt it, right? FanDuel is everywhere. They expand to a bunch more states. In terms of today's markets, in Japan, we're up 0.9%, Hong Kong up 0.5%, China up 0.4%, India up 1.8%. We're looking mostly green across the board. In Europe, at midday, now after midday, the footy in London up 0.2%, Paris up 0.4%, Frankfurt up 0.3%, the Dow up 0.2%, S&P up 0.2%, NASDAQ up 0.1%. S&P might be up a little bit more now. We'll see. You got to check. Maybe up a little bit more, but not by a lot. Probably roughly 0.2, 0.3. NASDAQ up 0.1, crude oil down 0.4%, gold down 0.1, Bitcoin down 2.4%, back to just under 28K. In terms of today's economic calendar, we got Chicago PMI, consumer sentiment at 10. Consumer sentiment could be something that moves things, right? You'll likely see a little bit of volatility at 10 a.m. whenever that comes out. So far, whatever move that's happened, on the back of consumer sentiment is kind of like the first move has been faded, and then the next move ends up being a move that has legs. We'll see if that ends up being the case today, but that's just been an observation over the course of the past few times that we've gotten that data. Now, what else is happening? We'll close up here with our rapid-fire bullet point rundown. U.S. economy, Q4 GDP revised down again in final estimate. Virgin Orbit, ticker VORB, ceases operations and axes most of workforce. Doesn't sound good for Virgin Orbit. Fed Treasury fine Wells Fargo over sanctions violations. Wells Fargo is crusty. Stop messing around with Wells Fargo. They are the shadiest bank. It's like every other week they're getting fined for something, right? They're literally committing fraud or this or that. Like any other company will be forced to shut down at this point if they're doing this stuff. Like banks just get away with literally anything. It's so crazy. Scrambling for minerals. Ford, ticker F, inks big nickel deal with Indonesia. Let's see here. Tesla reportedly eyes American battery plant alongside CATL. Nikola, ticker NKLA, shares at nearly $1 after new stock offering. Wow. It's crazy. Remember when they were going to be the Tesla killer? Royal Clause, DeSantis' board says Disney stripped them of power. Apple buying Disney, Needham says worth more together. That is something that I saw yesterday. There was an analyst who said that it would make sense. Disney's chart was looking solid, so I indulged in some Disney. Whether or not that ends up causing Disney to run, who knows? But the chart was looking good anyways, so this news could end up, just being a nice little bit of fuel on the fire. Basically, they were purporting that, Apple is struggling when it comes to the content that they create. So Apple should just buy Disney in like an all-stock deal. I don't know if Disney will want to be bought out like that, but Apple would definitely have the content that it needed if it purchased Disney. And it would, I don't know if that's even possible. I mean, Apple would literally become probably the most powerful company in the world. I mean, Disney is the largest media force of our time. And if Apple owned Disney, I mean, like that is crazy. But basically, Apple said they spend roughly $1 to $2 billion on content this year. For context, all the major other streaming giants have to spend like around $20 billion on content per year. So them saying, oh, we're going to spend $1 to $2 billion on content this year is like kind of a joke. So people are wondering like, all right, what's their deal? Like, what's their plan? Because you just cannot compete with your Netflixes and all them, and you're spending $1 to $2 billion per year, right? You need literally 20 times that to even put a drop in the bucket. So we'll see. But they would definitely be worth a lot together. I mean, Apple is like the most popular hardware company, in terms of like just sentiment and what they do and what they're involved in. And if they, get involved with Disney too, and then you have like one of the biggest hardware companies and software companies and services companies combining with the biggest media company. So that would be huge. I don't know if the FTC would let that happen, but we'll see. Bed Bath & Beyond, ticker BBBY, slumps on latest bankruptcy hint. More layoffs, Roku to cut around 6% of its workforce. And then after Alibaba breakup, JD.com files for Hong Kong IPOs. So that'll wrap us up here on this very fine week, the last week in March, and we sent it out with a bang. I'm talking big bank all this week. It was beautiful, but more importantly, we learned a lot of lessons, right? You got to see that parallel channel in action. You got to see a number of chart patterns in action. You got to execute. I love all the messages, right? People, hey, did my first trade, or I did this, or I won my first one, or, I did 300% profit on this. Like, that is awesome. That is amazing. 50% profit, right? 50%, 40%, all of that. Amazing, right? You're out here executing. You're moving. You're closing the gap, and you're accomplishing your goals. This is where it starts, right? Each and every day, you make those moves, right? Next thing you know, you're ripping and running, and what you make in markets is becoming a substantial part of your income, right? Which is amazing, right? It's amazing. That's what we want to do. Learn those tools from inside the white picket fence, make them available to everybody. So I'm pumped up. I'm energized. We had an amazing month, right? And I'm looking to continue that as we head forward, into the rest of this year. Again, 25% of the year is over. Where are you at, right? Are you any closer? If not, no reason to be ashamed, no reason to get scared. Just get to work, right? That's what we're all about. So if you got any value from this, I only ask that you show love to the account in return, right? The YouTube shorts, go onto this YouTube account, like, comment, show love. Same thing with Instagram, right? Like, comment, show love. I come here for free every morning in order to make sure we're all setting the right tone going into markets. So I don't ask for anything in return. If you could do that, though, that'd be very solid, right? I went ahead and just broke down and got the Instagram verification since that fake account had been going around DMing people. If you get messages or a follow from that fake account, please just block them and report them so that they can get taken down. I can't see them. I am blocked by them. Unfortunately, it won't be the last because the account is growing, right? The account is growing. And unfortunately, when you grow, you get fake accounts made of you. So I went ahead, got the verification. If you don't see that blue check mark, it's not me, right? So don't respond. Don't pay attention to them. Somebody out here trying to scheme and scam instead of making money the good old fashioned way in the markets, right? So everybody have a great, safe weekend. We're going to finish out this week on a high note. I'll see you back here on Monday for our next pre-market rundown session. Have a good one.